Welcome to the stream. Hope everyone's keeping well. Oh, you know what I need to do? Let's pull this over here. Make sure say hi in the chat. So, today I was supposed to do 2 weeks ago on my last stream. I was supposed to do a Valentine's sculpt, but ended up continuing with the Hellboy. But I said I'd do it, so I decided I'd start one today at least. So you can see the 2D I did here, just a quick face. So this is what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna make a face from scratch, and what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna show you how I block it out and then pose it during the block out stage. When you're doing like sculpts just for render, that can be really helpful. If I'm doing a production character, of course I wouldn't do that, but yeah, so I'm going to show you like in the block out stage how I pose it and then dynamesh it and get everything together. At least hopefully we can get that far into it. And then yeah, after, the idea is that this will be Cupid, but instead of with a bow and arrow, he'll be a sniper. That's my silly idea, but it could be kind of cool. I'm debating on whether I want to do like a full like model a full sniper rifle myself, because I'm working on other things at the moment. But we'll see. I still may, or I might just, I might actually even have a gun there that I made a while back I could reuse. I have a I decided recently, too recently, that I would I'd put night mode on and set it for 8 o'clock, so that when I'm working, as soon as night mode comes on, like I can't texture or anything because the screen's all dim, so that'll stop me from working late, and that way I go to bed and I work early in the morning before work, which is great, and I would highly recommend it, making sure that you don't work late, because I don't think it's actually, I think it's kind of anti-productive in a way, personally. But of course now I only did this recently. Aha! There you go. I couldn't find the button to turn night mode off. It feels really bright now. But anyway, problem solved. Hey Alex, hey Matt. The purple names, I've got like a chat and it's got like a blue background so I can see everyone's chat, and it's blue. So anyone whose name comes up from like Twitch and it's purple, it's always like, it's really jarring to the eye. So your art is at you. There you go. How's it going, buddy? And Skull Knight, good luck. Thanks. Doesn't oh, Yulia, how are you? Nice to see you back. So again, I said this last time, I'm kind of trying to remember to say it to people, because I always think like I don't put like music on, because obviously I have to, like through the stream I can only play copyright or copyright free music, which people may or may not really want to hear, and I always kind of think, you know, probably better for you guys if you just open another tab and you play whatever music if you like or not, and that way I'll leave it in your hands. So feel free, if you want to listen to some of your own music while I tip away, then please do. I do, that's why I have the headphones on. I'm debating in my head whether to watch your stream or study math. I had planned to study math during this hour. That is tricky. Maybe you could meet it in the middle. Just mute it mute my stream, and you can still kind of watch it on the side if you like, although that could be still distracting. I'm going to leave that with you. I shouldn't weigh in on that, because if you need to study, you should study. Crazy idea, so simple. New tab, my own music. There you go. Hey, Spy Hog. Just look up at the stream every once in a while while you study. Yeah, you could do that. It could be distracting though, because you could end up like, you look up for a minute, and then before you realise it, you've been looking up for like half an hour. It can happen, I don't know, it depends on the person. So Mayank Kumar, you're on time. You are, buddy. Good man. Hey, David. Yeah, so let's get started with the block out for this guy. I'm going to switch material. I tend to use the ZBrush clay set. These are nice. Sometimes I switch them up just to kind of, it's like kind of like flipping the canvas. Just changes your perspective a little bit. So first thing, start Z-remesh and get these things a little bit lower, because there's no need for loads of polys at this stage. So I'm going to do the usual. So our first sphere is going to be the cranium. And by the way, I know I go over my process, and any of my streams I always try to like say what I'm doing. But this year, and I think I mentioned it before, I want to do a tutorial, because I've never done a tutorial. So I'd like to do one this year, and it's basically the plan thus far will be to just have a tutorial where it's just one place, you can grab it, and it'll be the whole process in one place, step by step. No messing, you don't have to listen to me. Well, you'll have to listen to me, but not just talking pony amidst the work. It'll just be straight to the point. So I'll if you're interested in that, when I get around to it, I'm working on a project at the moment, a personal project that I want to get through first. But once I do that, I'm gonna hopefully start then on the tutorial. So if you're interested in that, I'll post about it on my Instagram or stuff like that, so you can catch it all there. So right now I'm just trying to get like the gist of this guy's noggin, and just like I always say, just blast it in as quick as you can. Don't be paying too much attention, and don't be trying to make it. Okay, even I would say I even suffer a little bit from that. Like I tried to, I want it to look good almost straight away, and it's not really, I wouldn't say it's necessarily conducive to sticking to the point and getting the right, just getting the right marks in, not necessarily the pretty ones at the early stages. So I'm going with essentially the left hand side of the face is where I'm referencing from right now. And so I'll do it in symmetry based on the left hand side, like as in screen left hand side of his face. And once I'm happy more or less with the shapes, which you'll see, I will break the symmetry while still at the blocking stage. which not a lot of people seem to do, or I don't see a lot of people do that, at least. And I think for the most part, it's like a fear of that being so much work, like you have to now work in asymmetry, but it's not really. Oh. It's not really a lot more work, because you're not breaking the symmetry on absolutely everything, of course, but it once the things are in the right place, like the main forms, if you have to do the whole lot asymmetrically, then obviously that's a fair amount more work than doing the whole thing symmetrically. But if you've got the main shapes in there, then I find it quicker to break the symmetry at the blocking stage, then dynamesh everything and work asymmetrically from there, then dynameshing everything and then trying to push and pull to get an entire expression and move things around when everything is now welded together. I think this way tends to be actually so I'd say this is slightly quicker to do it this way. Around the jaw. The jaw is going to go up and meet the ear, and his head at the back will kind of need to be shallow. I'm kind of thinking, like almost like squinting your eyes and thinking about where the forms flow, like that jaw flows up into the back of the head. Obviously it goes up this way, but you're getting something rather than this, which it depends. It's just looking for flow where you can find it and trying to be conscious of it, not like trying to line up every single line, but finding the big lines and trying to let them flow, for me, is really important. Especially, I was about to say especially with stylized sculpting, but even with realistic sculpting, like if you're designing a character, even if you're designing like a realistic dragon or something, you want to get the base forms underneath. It's still all the same rules still apply. You know what I mean? You're applying the same fundamentals. Which I think a lot of people don't really understand. Generally, professionals will understand that, but beginners and people who aren't necessarily artists, just maybe, I don't know, some people might just follow you on Instagram or something just because they think it looks, the stuff looks cool or whatever, which is great. Not to complain about those people, but they just may not understand the subtleties of it because they haven't been trained, or they don't look it up or whatever, which is completely understandable, obviously. And that's something actually, sometimes like feedback is really important when you're working on something. Show it to somebody, see what their first impressions are, see how they read what you've done. But something I find quite valuable even is asking people who aren't artists, who don't study any of this or anything. Just see what they think, see how they read it. You might approach it slightly different, Like you might, instead of saying just what do you think of this, you're like, what's the first thing you look at? If I show you this, what's the first thing you look at? You know, see, are they looking where you intended them to look first? It can be really useful rather than, you know, showing it to an artist who might just give you like technical feedback, or, you know, say an edge could be, you know, it can be kind of clouded by that stuff sometimes. Like I think both, you should do both, but I think people neglect to just show people, you know, whoever, show your man, show your girlfriend or boyfriend or mate or whatever. Their opinions matter too, because like if you're going to do this in the industry, it's not just artists who are going to watch the films or play the games or whatever it is you're doing. So don't forget those people. Hey Gats. Joss, do I always start so low poly? I do, yeah, every time. It's a lot easier to control. There's just no reason to start high poly. Doesn't benefit you in any way when you're trying to get the primary forms. High poly is just means it's gonna be, you won't be able to smooth it as easily. You won't be able to move things as you move things around in the low poly. You know, when you smooth it, then it's gonna be nice and clean, and you don't have to worry about trying to go in and smooth on top of stuff like that. So yeah, there's no reason to be high poly at this stage. So again, I'm trying to see, maybe the jaw goes up like that and then comes out into the back of the head. Get some flow. Off that ear. So, you know, I'm just paying attention to I'm not being controlled by the flow of the shapes. You know, if I feel like something doesn't look right in that position, then I'll move it. But you know, it's still, don't be like, oh, I have to have flow here, so I'm gonna make this go like that to meet this kind of thing. You know, I'm not gonna, because it seems like there's flow here, therefore I must do it. You gotta think too, like, does it look good? Like, do I think this looks good? Don't forget that side, because this is another reason, you know, I think sometimes artists, include myself, I absolutely get caught up in design rules and stuff like that, and sometimes just forget to just look at it as a person and think like, do I like how this looks? They get caught up in following these design rules or theories of shape language and stuff that they learned from a tutorial or in class or whatever the case may be, and they forget to just look at it and think, does this look good? This is why also I tend to draw things first. I know, and I have done it too, trying to design in 3D, which you can totally do, but for me, what I find helps me is when I'm trying to design, when I can just kind of move my hand around real quick and make forms and like draw through forms and all that. I can make real quick marks, and there's a gesture to that I personally can't quite get as well when I do it straight in Sculpt. Yulia, the struggle is real. I should be working right now. Yeah, that happens. Sometimes we need a break too. Take the pressure off a little bit. Alex is going to join us in the next hour. Awesome. Best of both worlds. Sounds good. Okay. Yasser. Hi Paul. I have to study anatomy to sculpt characters, or should I sculpt what I see? Well, yeah. So I see Artist Eddie saying both. You can sculpt what you see, but it's really good to know anatomy. It helps. Which is true. I would agree with that sentiment. I think, yeah, well, yeah. The short answer is yes, you should study anatomy. It's very important for sculpting characters. It's going to inform almost everything in a character. When you're sculpting the body of a character and the face and everything, it's going to inform design, everything. Even if you're working from a pre-existing design, it's going to inform a lot. So yes, you most certainly should study anatomy. Because even when you sculpt what you see, usually what you're looking at is 2D. You know, even if you're sculpting from a picture or whatever, it's 2D, and 2D doesn't answer all the questions for you. So you're going to need to know how that anatomy works, because you can't just copy. I know I've seen 3D artists who basically just copy. They still know anatomy, but they basically just copy. And in my experience, 3D artists, character modelers that really understand their anatomy, but also know about design and understand 2D design and so on, tend to, not always, but generally speaking, they tend to make for better 3D modelers, better character modelers. So basically yes, I would say absolutely. I mean, sculpt regardless, always sculpt. You can study anatomy by sculpting it, you know. Use your work to study. So always go too big first on the eyeballs. What I want to make sure is that I can still, you see the way, you see this a lot in 2D, and I do it too. You can still see the side of the face on the left hand side there, even though you're at a 3/4 angle. Like you're at, like to my face there, you're at a 3/4 angle. You can, it's not just eyeball here, you can still see the side of the face, and you can still see that there. So I want to make sure that I don't do that kind of thing, you know, even if it was further back on. You see? Or and that can be a problem with, I've seen in plenty of sculpts where they make the side of the head stops in here. Like that. There's nothing on the side of his head. And your eye socket wraps around your eye. So essentially what you're sculpting has no eye socket. And even if you're doing, like, this is the thing with stylized regardless the fact that it's stylized, it still has to be informed by anatomy. Especially when you're in production and things need to be animated. Even when you're doing super, like, the head is essentially like a sphere or whatever, you still have to think, alright, well, sometimes you're going to have the head is actually just a sphere and there's like a 2D rig put on top of that, and then, you know, whatever. But oftentimes the head is still is like basically just a pure primitive, but you still have to think about, okay, where's the mouth gonna open from? So where is the jaw? Where's the brow? Like when they get worried, what moves? Where is the brow? So where's the eye socket? You're obviously not sculpting a deep eye socket or anything like that, but you're just thinking about those things. You know, I enjoy anatomy, especially in the face. So I always, that's why I always kind of sculpt this kind of style. You know what I mean? It's like it's definitely like an animation kind of style, I guess, but it's oftentimes I lean towards like comic-y stylized rather than just cartoon. But it depends too. Sometimes I get bored of that and I want to do like really, I tend to, I like sculpting kind of that 90s cartoon vibe, goofy kind of proportions. Like the Reverend that I did, if any is seeing that, I did a stream. I did most of that on stream. Let's get the nose in. Start speeding up a little bit. It's a really long face. ZBrush. So I have ZBrush keyed to a key to the shortcut key because I use it constantly. Let me see. Nafax. So I know how to model and animate, and even created an animated cartoon series, both 2D and 3D. How can I get the funding or get paid at least something for my work? Well, I might not be the best person to ask how to get funding for if you're making your own film or whatever and you want to get funding, because it's not something that, like, I've never tried to make my own animation from start to finish. It's not something that kind of, for me, it's just not something that I really want to do. I just want to make characters. But like, it sounds like if you're able to do that, then you've obviously got a good skill set there, and skills are worth money. Something I always remember is in Batman, in the Batman movie, Dark Knight Returns, right? With Heath Ledger. There's a part in it where he goes into all the mob bosses and stuff, and he's saying that he'll kill Batman for them, and he's like, they call him out on it. They're like, if you could kill Batman, you'd have done it already. And then he says, if you're good at something, never do it for free. I would second that notion. Do it for yourself. That's not for free. If you're doing it for yourself, you're not doing it for free. You're doing it for the pleasure of doing it. But don't do work for anyone else for free, because then you're giving them their enjoyment or their whatever, and for nothing. If they want it, if they really want it, they should either pay for it or do it themselves. I don't condone, to me, I do not condone doing any work for people for free. But yeah, anyway, I don't want to go on a tangent there. So yeah, you've obviously, you know how to do these things. So studios or doing it in freelance, you can absolutely make money. But I'm sure you know that already. So in terms of getting funding for a film to make your own thing, I don't know, man. There's like, you know, a lot of people like I know a studio I used to work for did like every year they did like a thing where people would come with their pitches for short films they want to make or whatever, and if you kind of did like an interview type thing, or well, you did a pitch. I'm talking about an interview. You did a pitch, and if they liked it, there was like rounds. You go further and further. And if you just got chosen, the studio would help you build it. It'd help you make your short film. Of course, they owned the short film then. So that was the trade-off, I guess, if you consider it a trade-off. But it meant, you know, studio resources would be used. You wouldn't get money yourself. The studio would just take it on and spend money essentially on it. But yeah, sorry man, I don't know, I can't necessarily really help you with that one, unfortunately. I don't know enough about that kind of thing. It's just not something I've ever tried to do myself. Unless it's for your mom. Unless it's for your mom. That's Tom, very true. In which case, yeah. Or your grandmother. Rami, hello Paul, I love you. I love you too, Rami. Tyler Matthew Harris. How do you check which version of ZBrush you have installed? I bought a plugin that requires a specific version. It says it up here in the top left. Oh, I don't know if you can actually see that. Yeah, you can't see it because it's like cropped out so that everything fits on the screen, but the very top left, it has what version of ZBrush you're using. So the latest being 2021.5.1. Where is it? Oh yeah, there you go. Dallin Penman has got your back. Which version name? Yeah. It's easy to miss if you don't know it's there. It's all good. When you're breaking down shapes, do you like to draw rather than sculpt, and do you do anything like figure drawing to improve? So yeah, when I start, I always like to start by drawing. I always drew. I was a 2D artist before I ever even used ZBrush. That's where you know, like a lot of my anatomy knowledge and all that kind of stuff I learned through 2D. And then I picked up ZBrush, and you know, obviously I loved using ZBrush, so I kept at that. But I still, as you can see there, like I drew this one, like I still draw first. I just find the looseness of drawing, and you can do lots of iterations really quickly. And I know you can work really quickly with like ZBrush. That was the beauty of when ZBrush became a thing. It changed 3D modeling, where you could be faster and make iterations really quick, and Like that's hugely important, not just for artists but for the entire industry. And so once that, even though that is absolutely possible with ZBrush, like I think because I came from a 2D background, and because there's just like it's a different process, you know, like for the same reason I work in chunks like this when I do, like I work in multiple pieces and I keep things low poly, and that's part of my process while making something. And the reason it's part of my process is because due to that process it gives a certain output. It results in a certain look at the end. If I wanted a different look, maybe I'd just use a Dynamesh sphere and just keep going that way because I want to set a different way, a different look, and so I go about it a different way. The same, like I want a certain feel to my characters, and I get that through drawing better than I do when I just do it in ZBrush. I get more flow to the lines and stuff, and quicker. So yeah, I always will draw to start with it when I'm doing my own designs. Like you see this, like just C curve here. Like I wouldn't have necessarily done that if I was working in 3D. Where because I did that in 2D, it forces me to think that way then when I'm working in 3D. Because I have to, because now I'm like, I want to match that now, you know? But like even then, I'll always just really loose, really simple drawings, and then I'll figure out the rest in ZBrush. That's how I like to work. But you can see it in so many other artists. There's so many great examples of great 3D artists who started as and still are great 2D artists. You know, Dylan Ekrin, Gabriel Suarez, Brandon Lawless, I'm even pretty sure does a lot of 2D himself. Matt Thorpe is another example. There's rakes of them, because the two things do feed into each other very directly. I would say, in terms of like, you know, they share the same fundamentals, and the same principles. And the better I get at 3D, the better I get at 2D, and the better I get at 2D, that improves my 3D. So yeah. Alright, let's give this guy, let's use our eyelid trick. I've showed this before. So I'm going to do 2 open eyes and I'll close one. Again, keeping low poly. Bring the draw size down to 0. Now using Z modeler, mask edge loop complete. So now I've got this whole loop, this whole edge masked. So just control tap there and flip that. So essentially this outer edge here now is all masked off. So I'll put this where I need it. control click and flip it. Super easy, and I can control it super easy because it's only a couple of points. And I mean, I don't have a bunch of points, or I don't have to use a lattice or anything like that. And then I can just subdivide it. So just flip it again. Do you recommend getting an anatomy book to use as reference? I was looking at anatomy for sculpting, sculptors, is that what you mean? But it's crazy expensive here, like €300. Yeah, that's actually what I have. It's around here somewhere, but yeah, that's the same book I have. I think it is a good investment. If I know it might be expensive, but that seems more than. But anyway, whether you get that one or not, a good anatomy book is great to have around for reference. It's super helpful to be like at every level. There's no, I don't even mean for beginners. I do it. I don't know anyone who doesn't always reference anatomy. Even like people who, like artists that, like sculptors that are, you know, I would consider much more knowledgeable on anatomy than me, and they still, you know, anatomy's like their thing. And of all the people, they're the ones that would check reference like that the most. So yeah, it's well worth having a good anatomy book at hand. Sorry, I'm missing a bunch of stuff. Mike May Art. How are you today? So glad I discovered you by Pixologic. Really being amazing by all the world. Thank you very much, Mike. That's very nice. I'm very glad you've enjoyed it. When I started sculpting, my drawings became so much better. I could envision things better, depth of the eyes, angle of the neck from back to front. Yeah, exactly. I had the exact same experience when I started sculpting. They really do feed into each other. That's great. Adrian Parkinson, I find that when I sculpt a stylized character from a sketch, I need to trace it. How do you get good at sculpting while simply looking at your reference, or is it just lots of practice? It is lots of practice. It is lots of practice. Tracing, I never really traced, because I felt like if I keep just looking at it and working from that, then I'll get better. You know, you get better at whatever you do. So I always try to keep that in mind. Not to say there's anything wrong with tracing. I know lots of people who do it. But I wanted to get good at just being able to do it by eye. And I didn't want to get kind of, for me, I was afraid that I'd get bogged down in getting exactly what was in the 2D, where I want to be able to flesh things out in 3D and add my own, you know, sensibilities to it. So I don't like to trace personally. Now, you know, that's not always. Sometimes in a studio they might, well, you didn't copy it exactly, and they won't be happy with that. Personally, I just wouldn't. I would generally try to stay away from those kind of studios because I just don't like to work that way. Obviously, depends. Sometimes you just need a job, but you know, like I'm generally at a point in my career, I think, where I don't have to be that, you know, I can be a little bit pickier now. which is, you know, it's kind of like that's your reward, I guess. If you keep at it and work hard enough, you get to start being a little bit pickier. So yeah, I try to stay clear of that. The other thing that helped me a lot was the fact that I did a lot of life drawing. I don't nowadays, but I did a lot of life drawing, and life drawing really teaches you to do that, to focus on seeing forms and stuff, and putting down what's really there, not what you think is there. But yeah, that took a lot of time. Like, that wasn't an overnight thing. I think actually these are a little bit too. This way. I need to pull this back a little bit more. Speaking of eye depth, Mike May. Yeah, there you go, anatomy4sculptors.com, that's the very one. So, where was I? Hi from Moscow, cool. Thanks for joining. Okay, so, whoa, has it just jumped ahead? Oh no, it hasn't. Okay, sorry. So, okay. Oh, I definitely missed a question there. Oh, network with people, is that like for funding? I mean, yeah. So Amish, hey Paul, I'm a student and have been following your work. Do you review on student work? If so, is there any platform to reach out to you to get reviews? Would be really great for our portfolios. I do. I try to. I was able to do it more at one point, but I've taken on kind of a bunch of stuff. But I put my link tree. I just posted my link tree there. You'll find a link to my Discord, and when I get some time, I will try to get in there and give reviews. People will post in the whips and stuff. You can see the character lounge. People will post in like whips and even finished work and stuff. The whips tends to be quite busy, like lots of people in there. There's other great artists in there that will also do it. Someone I worked with for the last couple of years, Darko Matev, is in there. He's brilliant, and he gives really good feedback, like really in-depth feedback, and he's a really good character artist. So and yeah, I try to get in and do that as much as I can. At the moment I'm literally working morning, noon and night, so I haven't been active on it for a while, unfortunately. But that's as but that's somewhere where I'll give some feedback on work for sure. I think the eyes are bothering me. I think I need to add in some more things here. You see, the eye placement is bothering me. Let's just do this. I want to get that nice curve, which I'm going to get that edge there, but I'll fix that when I do eventually dynamesh everything. Time yet? Okay. I'm not sure if I'm going to get all the way through, just because it'd be hard to answer questions in the chat and stuff, as well as get as much work done as I'd like. But yeah, I'm hoping what I wanted to do at some stage was like, when I start making more YouTube content, what I'd like to do, and I haven't like planned out how or when I'm gonna do that, but it's something that I've wanted to do for ages. I'd like to do some like portfolio reviews, or you know, review some people's work and stuff like that, because it can be good, it can be really helpful for everybody. You know, even though it might not be your work particularly, a lot of people have the same issues, so that can be really helpful. So that was something I was thinking would be a good thing to do on the YouTubes. People will find some value in it. Right, I need to stop messing with this thing. I need to move away from it. Getting obsessed with this eyelid. Can't. Let's do another eyelid. There she is. Right down to 0 so we don't get any thickness, because we don't need thickness right now. We can add that in after the fact. We're staying loosey goosey. Do you work in dynamic perspective? I don't know what you mean by dynamic perspective. I work in perspective. So there's orthographic, there's perspective on. I wonder, do I have? I don't think I set this. I keep forgetting to set this. I generally set it to 85. Like I go into draw and down to 85, because I'll usually render in Maya. So and I'll usually render at that. I'll usually render with that millimeter camera. So just to match that a little bit better. I don't like 50mm so much, because it tends to get really warped when you get kind of close. So you can see here, like I'm just making the eye with just a normal open eye, because it'll be easier later when I break the symmetry. I'll be able to lift this eyelid up, like so, like the cheek will push the eyelid up. And the idea here, I never really explained it, is if I make a gun and stuff, is him like looking down the barrel, because he's Cupid the sniper, rather than with a bow and arrow. I was thinking of like having like a pink suit and stuff, and putting some like, I don't know, making some of his things out of like candy and all that type of stuff. It's funny, I use like American phrases sometimes, I notice on the streams. I think it's just because I want to like make sure everyone can understand me. Even though I know y'all know, everyone here knows what's sweet. Did I say y'all there? That you all know what sweets are, but I don't know, I just said candy for some reason. But anyway, it's weird because I don't like, if I'm down the kitchen talking to other Irish people, it's not how I talk at all. It's bizarre. Not that I mind, it's just an interesting observation, I guess. Let's see here. Faffing about is still my favourite term. Nice. Learn from your channel. Well, I'm glad I could be useful to you. That's Toulouse. Why do you have to have such complicated names? Just like there's David, just good man David. Also, which curve tool do you use to create the eyelid? So it's the topology brush. So you just BT. And there it is there. So BTO for your topology brush, and then you can just draw, and then draw, like literally draw quads, and then when you tap, depending on the how your draw size, if you have a big draw size, you'll get thickness, you get a lot of thickness, and then if you go bring the draw size all the way down to 1, you get a plain, you get no thickness at all. So that's the idea. So we're faffing now. Marits. Okay, yeah, nice. You've broken it down for me. Maritza Louise. Is that right? That's a hard thing to. That's like a hard thing to just say. Well, for me it is. My Irish barbarian. We used to names it like Ted. Well, no, actually, that's a lie. We're used to names it like Fiacre and Cahill and Siobhan, which is always great crack to see in studios and stuff. And you've like a Siobhan or Donica is a great one. It's an Irish name, and those and I'm watching like someone coming from like, you know, Spain, Germany, France, India, wherever, anywhere, and seeing these names for the first time, and you know, like Owen, which here is spelled E-O-I-N. So like they only see the name written, and then the first time they meet them, you know, in an email or whatever, then the first time they meet them, they're like, "Hi, Owen." No, that sounded right. Ian or something. I think a guy in work called a guy called Owen one day Ian. Or Siobhan is S-I-O-B-H, right? I feel like I'm... Yeah, B-H-A-N. I was confusing myself there. So, even though it's Siobhan, it's B-H in Irish is a V sound. It's like a V sound. So, it's always funny seeing someone go, "Hi, Siobhan," like, "see a ban." So I say I use simple names. We don't at all. H-N. I've never seen with a H in it. You're wasting time talking. Please concentrate on work. My apologies. I like to chat with everyone. It's part of the fun of the stream. I have to enjoy it too, you know. I understand that correctly, you have ZBrush on. Okay, if I understand correctly, you have ZBrush on shortcut, and you keep retoppling every sphere you bring in as you are moving it around instead of dynamic subdiv or dynameshing. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I just always lower it, make sure the poly count is low. Just keep the poly count low. Makes life easier. Now I may even actually do something silly. Do I have... I do. So I haven't done it with this yet, but what I'm going to do is just tighten that up. And then ZBrush it. And then obviously ZBrush is going to find that edge that I've created and adds and make sure that the loops are there. So it'll give me the loops where I want them. use this again, man. Get a bit mucky with it. Now, what you need to do is, this is where, so my anatomy knowledge now is telling me the lower lip needs to be, for this character, further back than the upper lip. See how that looks funny? Just be further back in. So what we can actually do is bring this out. And now I'm adding some subdivisions. Because I want to add like a muzzle here. I could also do this with another piece, which I might actually do. Because it might be a bit easier than doing it this way. So to isolate that, I'm actually going to bring this out because what I want is this area to come out nice and gradually. I don't want just a bump. Now doing the lips separately is something that I don't generally, I do it sometimes. I don't generally do it because it's hard to visualize it, visualize the lips blended into the head properly. Tends to look weird, and you really need to dynamesh that in to really work them out properly then. And sometimes if it doesn't work, you end up just having to sculpt them in anyway. So I don't always do it that way. But it feels a little bit more applicable this time, based on the shape and sharpness of his lips. Hey Alex F1, how's it going, buddy? How are you keeping? Thanks for joining. Oh yeah, what about the new tagline? Yeah, I put that on Instagram the last time. Sculpting easy peasy with Paul Deasy. I must actually say that to Kyle and see can we change that on Pixologic's thing, because I would genuinely love that. I'm gonna see can I do it. And I don't even know, I remember, oh, wasn't it, it was a Lord of the Rings character, was it Frodo Baggins, or what was it? I know I have it written down somewhere, anyway. But credit to that genius. So, and now here we just want to pull this lip out. Feels kind of awkward, but it's just always, I find it always awkward to, again, it's about the process. It's kind of always feels a little bit awkward to make the lips this way, but we'll work with it for now. When we dynamesh it, hopefully we'll get time to get that far into it now to me. This is why I'd like to do a tutorial, because like at the moment you can get my process online, but it's kind of fragmented. It's across multiple videos, and you know, for people like who was that earlier? Oh yeah, El Haider Ali. Doesn't necessarily like the talking, the chit chat, just wants to see the process, which is fine. That way I can you know, it'll be one place where you can just get the information, and that'll be that. So if you are looking to learn my process and all that stuff, it'll be a nice easy way to get it. Now what way do I want? Do I want to like anyway, we're going to use this now. Or will we? No, we won't. I'm just going to use two spheres. Yulia, can't wait for the tutorial. There's me, I'm sure most of us enjoy the chat also. Well, that's good, I'm glad. Yeah, because I enjoy the chat. I'm a chatty type person, I think. But I understand some people do just want to, you know, they're here just to learn. And they just want to see the process. That's fine. I'm not giving you slack. So I want to get like, I don't want to cover the lips, do I? A little bit. So the idea here will be his moustache will kind of be like, will kind of look like a heart. I just want to give it a little edge. It's because like hairs come down and then they have like an edge generally, so it's like it's kind of a little a mark to suggest that essentially. And then down here I'm going to duplicate the head, delete lower, and I can actually just do that. Go back to my mask pen. So you see now I've got the two heads, see? Well, two jaws. And a little bit of thickness. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'll delete that really quick. Go back to that second head. Extract. down. Let's get the poly count down a little bit. Thanks, Janan Alsaid. Janan Alsaid. Thank you. I'm done studying math. Alex is back. Everyone say hi to Alex. Tell him welcome back to the stream. Tell him we missed him. We missed you, Alex. Thanks for coming back. I hope your study went well. Tell us, why are you studying math specifically? Are you in school, or do you have a specific math? See, this is what I mean. Not to go on a tangent, but really quick. When I say, like, I go math, like, how do I even say that? Math class. Like, I don't say math. In my accent, it comes out like ma. It's just ma. I'm studying maths. When you add the S at the end, it's then you add the T. But like, other than that, it's like, what are you studying? Ma. But no, yeah, I guess no, you would say maths. But yeah, sometimes I just find myself like over pronouncing things, trying to make sure that you guys can understand me okay. Yeah, what has you studying maths? Do tell. We're all dying to know. It's a thing now. Here's Alex and his maths again. Hey Martin, how many times do you need to sculpt a character like that without retopo, UV, etc. only to sculpt? How many times do you need to sculpt a character like that? Like, how much time is that? Maybe, I think is what you mean. Like, just to get this done, just a couple of hours will do. Yeah, generally, yeah, a couple of hours will do the job. Don't need too long. Obviously, well, again, it changes if you're like streaming, I'd need longer, because you know, chatting to everyone and stuff at the same time is kind of slows you down. But yeah, generally, like, if I was doing this for work, just take a few hours. I think it's not even just the talking. Like, I don't wanna, like, it sounds like I'm blaming you guys. It's not even just the talking. It's just like the fact that you're also trying to explain what you're doing and trying to be conscious of, like, is that obvious, or do I need to say something? Do I need to tell people, like, will people understand what I just did there? You know, you're constantly thinking of that stuff, so just that's taken away from the processing power, so it tends to slow you down. Tighten up this edge. Hey John Garrett. Yeah, how much? Yeah. How do you decide which volume you need to add as a separate subtool? So how I decide is, so for example, I want to control, say, the nose, and I want to shape the nose. so instead of, the reason I make it separate is because instead of pulling a nose out of this, and then as I shape the nose, I'm messing up this all over the place. Like I'm shoving this around, and I'm drawing Damien standard down it, and all this type of stuff. And it's very hard to get like a nice clean edge where, you know, where this surface comes along here and then just stops and turns into this surface. If I'm using Damien standard and all that stuff, I tend to get like bumps, and the way it transitions to the different angles isn't very clean. So when I can, so for that reason I want the nose to be a separate piece, because then I can control all that. So it's just out of necessity to have that control. So it's not like the nose has to be and the cranium has to be separate to this. Like I could have done this whole shape probably like these two. Probably could have done these as one piece. But I find like the more you break it up, the easier it is. But at the same time you have to remember, like at a certain point I'll need to dynamesh these two together in order to continue to make the shape work. Like the lips there, the lips as separate pieces, I don't generally do that because I don't think it's not always the best looking thing while it's before it's dynameshed. Yeah, that's really bothering me now. So that's why I generally don't with these. In this case I did it just because the sharp nature of those lips. Even if I duplicate these, I can use this topology to mask it. Just gonna see, can I fix this problem I'm having with this, and then I can do that. See, that's a separate subtool now, see? Yeah, so it's just to control the forms easier, and control the forms easier, and control the edges and where the forms meet each other. Makes it a lot easier. So again, once I dynamesh that, I can like blend out here and keep in here maybe a little bit sharper. I think I need right, I'm gonna blend shit, or sorry, I'm gonna dynamesh. Let's just bring that subtool up the top. I'm gonna combine these because I want to work on them at the same time. So there you are, they're dynameshed to one piece now. Just hide everything, unhide that, duplicate it, Z-remesh it. That's Z-remesh. I've been coding for quite a while now. So Alex, I've been oh, here we go, the maths thing. I've been coding for quite a while now, such that I hardly get time to sculpt. I spend more time watching sculpting streams than doing the actual sculpting. Well, I mean, it's, if your priority is doing the coding for now, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. Wait a minute. It's funny, it didn't. The ZBrush wasn't symmetrical even though I have symmetry on. Where are we there? Okay, yeah. So yeah, if that's your priority at the moment, then for sure, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. You can always come back to sculpting when you want to come back to sculpting. It's important to, you know, sometimes, like at the moment, I'm doing a lot more kind of like look dev. I'm trying to do some more look dev stuff. So, you know, I'm doing more of that than sculpting at the moment. You know, if coding is something that you want to get into, or that you're studying at the moment, then, you know, so you can't sculpt for a while. You're doing something productive. You're doing, you know, nothing wrong with that. It's easier to keep separate subtools than using polygroup. Is it easier to keep separate subtools than using polygroups? Well, for this purpose, a polygroup wouldn't really do it because, like I said, it's not helping me to keep to control separate shapes, because the polygroups are still part of one mesh, and it also doesn't help me to control the edges between, like, the plane changes. So polygroups are helpful for sure, but not necessarily for that. I don't use polygroups too much, although I wouldn't want to go without them, because they can be really helpful. You know, like there's a certain point that I keep needing to come back to in mask. I'll always polygroup it. So yeah, I mean, I think I see why you're asking, but having them as separate pieces is still better. Yeah. Sorry, I had to fix my music. It was annoying me there. It's doing some weird stuff. Where was I? Okay, so okay, I'm gonna take a shot at this, and I already know your work. I already know who you are. You've been on the Discord. You do beautiful sculpts, but I don't know how to say that name because it's obviously not a name I'd be used to. Is it like, oh, how would that be? No, I have no, because I don't know what the accent thing over the A even means. I'm gonna butcher it if I say it. This is embarrassing. Ah, hold on. I have to figure this out now. I refuse to say it out loud because I know I can't say it right. It's not that simple. There's actually a YouTube video. There's a YouTube video on how this is a hard name to say. So at least I'm not alone now. Why? Oh, this is taking too long. No, I mean everyone's saying it wrong. It reads like Joao, maybe, Pedro Camara. But anyway, I took way too long on that. I apologize. Who did that concept? I did. Misha. Misha is Irish for me, by the way. Do you ever use mesh by union? Yeah, sometimes. The problem with mesh by union for me sometimes is if you've got like an intricate piece like an ear and there's loads of different meshes in it and they all intersect, mesh by union can be sometimes too accurate and you get like all this exploding geometry. Where Dynamesh is nice, it's just a brute force, just everything is one now, you know what I mean? There's no messing, no faffing. Alright, so I've got this as one piece now, so happy days. So let's move on. Boop. Because this is what I mean. Sometimes having it as separate mesh at a certain point is you're at a disadvantage. You need to work into the mesh itself. So at this point I needed to get in here and actually start working this face. Because I think this is why this is a common thing that will catch everyone up. Is it's like you're sitting there for ages trying to get something like the eyelids correct, like I did earlier, and you can't get them working, and you spend ages trying to fix them. And this is why you shouldn't. Because then after a while you realise, okay, the problem wasn't the eyelids, the problem was the eye socket. Or it could be anything, you know, it could be anything like that. So you got to be careful of that stuff to not get caught up in it. Get all your shapes in so that way you can see what's relative to what. Or else that kind of thing will trip you up. You end up spending ages on something that later you find out was not the problem at all. Or was a problem, but it was being caused by something else. This needs to come right out. How do you get your final results so smooth? Well, it's by working this way. Keeping everything separate and keeping your low subdivisions is the most important part of that. If you can keep things low. When you work with, if you work with the higher subdivision levels, you can't use Alt Smooth to like get your surface back. So like if I do this now, if I just up the brush a bit, press down, press shift, so I'm smoothing, that will do that. But I'm like polishing the mesh. You can see it there, it's losing volume. Where if I do it now and same thing, like I'm gonna smooth, but even I can start smoothing, but if I let go it will swap to the alternate version of that brush, which instead of polishing down will average the surface. So see the difference? So watch, I'll bring it up a little bit so you can see the surface is getting polished off, Now I press and lift it. You see? Back to a nice clean surface, nice rounded. I keep the volume nice and even and clean. You can't do that if you're up at high polys. There's too many polys. Or you can try, but you'd be sitting there for hours. You'd end up with carpal tunnel before you get the surface looking the way you want, looking even again. Right, this needs to drop. Alright, I'm breaking symmetry. We're in now, boys and girls. I'm not going back. See, I only have to break the symmetry here. Like I can still go back to symmetry and still play around down here, you know? Oh, sorry, Sina, I missed you earlier. Happy to see you again also. Thanks for joining. So you have a question, okay. How can study about cinematic poly paint effect texture? Huh. How can I study about cinematic poly paint effect texture? Okay, yeah. Well, okay, so texturing and poly painting are so like there's a lot in texturing. So ZBrush, like I use poly paint and okay, so for example I use ZBrush to poly paint. Tell you what, I can show you an example of a sculpt. This is the sculpt that I'm working on right now. This is a proper full project that I'm doing. Not, well, a full finished character. Is it that one? Yeah. So like this started in poly paint, and then I can and poly paint is great because it has lovely gradients and stuff, so you can start a really nice base in poly paint. And some people will do like really high detail painting even in poly paint. You will need to, as far as I know, there's no way around having to subdivide a lot to get like enough, because it's painting directly onto the surface as opposed to on a map. It's painting onto the polygons. So what it allows for is you can extract that as a texture map. Like you can extract maps from ZBrush, and that's fine. And you can there's plenty of YouTube videos on exactly that, and you can find out what the workflow is there. It's very straightforward, and ZBrush is great for that. And I do that as a base, and then I'll bring it into Substance Painter to start working further into it. Like that's where I made like roughness maps, and even then I'll add like subsurface scattering, and I'll do maps for that, even to like say where to have the intensity on the maps with maps using black and white on the subsurface scattering. And then you can also even take like your sculpt details. So say you have like a lower poly mesh, and then you can subdivide it a couple of times and sculpt into that, and then you can bake a normal map or a displacement map straight out of ZBrush, which is great too. So you can use all those tools, and there's loads of videos on YouTube and so on how to do that. It's quite straightforward. I mean, sculpting and getting that really nice detail is not straightforward. The artistic side of it is not straightforward, but the workflow in ZBrush to just technically do those steps is very straightforward. So yeah, you can see like the base there was done in ZBrush, and then like this kind of detail, this surface detail, or like the letter detail there, like that's all then done in Substance, making materials and stuff in Substance. The kind of skin pore texture there, that was done in ZBrush. I'd recommend. I have Pablo Muniz's skin pack. You can see there, it even says it on the brushes, so you just go to ZBrushGuides.com. I use like, bumpy noise. That'll give you like a nice base of like just pore kind of detail, and then you can go in on top of that if you want, and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I go about that. So I kind of use both ZBrush and Substance as well as from that. But honestly, you can actually polypaint is really, really good. Like I always at least start with polypaint, and I've gone further with it, and I've seen people do like really high detail stuff just with polypaint, and then just you can extract the map from a texture map from that, or unless you want to, you can also just render in ZBrush and get your different layer passes and bring that into Photoshop and stuff. So yeah, there's so many different ways to do it, and the only way to find out the best way for you is for you to do it. I can't tell you that, because it really comes down to what you enjoy doing, so you got to try it. There's no shortcut. No one can tell you, oh, this is the best way to do it. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. They want to hear just tell me how to do the thing. Well, you can, like, all of those ways. There's examples of every single way to do it, and there's examples of people doing it like extremely, extremely well. So unfortunately there's just no one perfect answer. I say unfortunately, I think that's a good thing. What time is it? Oh man, it's flying by today. I'm enjoying this stream. I hope you are all enjoying it as well, as much as I am. Okay. So you press Alt and smooth so that the surface won't get polished. Yeah, instead of the surface being polished, it gets evened out. So instead of pushing the surface in and polishing it down like you would if you were literally polishing a surface, it will like even the surface out. So if it's a ball with a bump in it, it will even it back into a ball. It will take like from the surface around it and even the whole surface out. So that's how you keep it clean. But you need it to be low poly to do that, because there's too many polys to even out if you're using like Dynamesh or whatever. That is the key. That's the big secret. No problem, seeing it. Happy to help. Just do it, exactly. Effect and textures that they're in movies. Wait. Effects and textures that they're in movies are very amazing and realistic. Yeah, for sure. Well, the other thing is in like VFX movies and stuff, a lot of that stuff are scans. So you have to remember that too. And they're not hand sculpted, because that takes time and time costs money, and there's no reason to do it because they just put a person in a room, scan their head, someone cleans that up, takes a fraction of the time, it's way cheaper and more accurate. I really don't want to not have round eyes, but it's starting to look like I'm gonna need to do some oval eyes. And it's like a little pet peeve of mine. I don't like to do oval eyes. Unless... Whoa. Go even bigger. There's no point in even keeping these under the same sub tool at this point, because these two eyelids need to be completely different. Because it's got to be... I may even just rebuild this eyelid. There's no point in really... I can bash it down. Well, maybe. You can like grab all these, flip it, and reverse it. There you go. And just flatten them. Again, that. Oh. So just on the same plane. we're going to use the slice curve tool. Like so. This kind of up here. What's up, Marty? How you doing, brother? If you intend to 3D print this model, would it be more efficient to pose the low poly subtool shapes first and then sculpt details, or would you sculpt everything in neutral pose and transpose? It'd be more efficient to pose the low poly subtool shapes first. Like if you find it, which I do find it faster, then there's no reason to stay neutral. Stay with a neutral or symmetrical pose. It's not helping you to, like, for printing, there's no need to be symmetrical. So for production, you're better off staying. Well, that didn't work out very nice. You can go down here to deformation. So see now, if I, okay, so I do that. Actually, that's pretty much fine, to be honest. What you can do is, if your ZBrush, if you've got like lots of these things and it's messing with your ZBrush and doing this type of thing, you can go in and just polish by groups. See that? And it polishes the edge for you. And then when you ZBrush, it's a lot easier. Now I don't want to do that in this particular case, but it's really handy. It really helps a lot. So actually, Paul Deasy did that on I think in the last ZBrush Central, on one of the tips. Was that when you mentioned it? I can't remember, but it's super helpful. See, this is where topology matters for those of you that don't know. See this? So this is a pole, right? So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges meeting in one area. So the reason that matters is, one, because it can cause problems with texturing, but two, because you'll always get like a lump where you get a pole, and especially if you have like a lump on the cheek. You know what I mean? You've got a pole on the cheek, and then you need to like do like the mouth blow or whatever, and that will, you'll see it, especially when you have any specular, you'll see that, and you want to try avoid that. So that's when you get into your topology. For any of you who haven't experienced that, it's like working on the topology of the face. This is where topology can be really, really intricate part of a character modeler's job. Is a very intricate part, or should be. And getting a character's face to deform well and not have problems with like poles, and not have problems with rigging, all those different things. Ah, Shane, how are you, brother? Thanks for joining. Shane Olsen's in. I'm sure most of yous, if not all of yous, already know Shane, because he's probably taught most of yous, because he is the man. single-handedly keeping or teaching the next generation of artistes, of fellow sculptors. If you haven't heard of him though, go into Google and type Shane Olsen. He's in the chat there. You've no excuse. Type it in, see what he's up to. He's doing all sorts. He's got that 3D character workshop. That's where he trains the next wave of sculptors to take over the world. What was the tip you missed? What was it? Oh, you probably know it. It's the, so you know, like if you've got a mesh or whatever, if you Z-remesh, or you're trying to Z-remesh it, and you've got all those jaggies along the edge, or like, you know, if you cut it with the slice, you end up with like bits sticking out and stuff. Use the polish by groups, and it will like polish off all those jagged edges, and that way when you Z-remesh, you get a clean Z-remesh. That was it was one, Paul Deasy said it at one of the, or Gabesy as I call him. He said it, I can't remember like whether it was, I don't know if it's the summit or, I can't remember. But he said it in one of the videos anyway. I was like, that has just solved a major problem with. Just casually solved a problem that was bugging me for years. Yeah, we're nearly out of time. Look, this is that. Who was it? I can't remember who it was that told me to basically shut up and get to work. No, I'm only joking. But like it was kind of funny though. Who was it? I can't remember. I don't want to give you a hard time around. You're right, because I've definitely been indulging in chat too much for this stream. I genuinely just enjoy the company, especially nowadays. It's nice, because I'm always sitting up here working away, so it's nice to have, you know. I enjoy an old chit chat, chin wag. I don't know, it feels like I don't want to be ignoring this. Sitting here just working like I'm on my own. It defeats the purpose of streaming. Well, you know what I mean. Yeah, see, this is why I was saying earlier that I'd be as well just remaking, rather than taking this and turning it into this. It'd be as well as just remaking this side of it. Yeah, I didn't get nearly enough done on this guy this week. But I got to show you the point anyway of taking a sculpt and doing the posing while you're still in the blocking stage, so you can still easily move everything around. Then you can dynamesh it, and then you can go in and do whatever detail you want on your or remesh by union, whichever you prefer, whichever is more applicable, and get your finer details. And you know, like smooth out your edges and so on where need be. Let's get the sort of brow on this guy. Alright, so this is, we'll try this the Gabesy technique again. See, I don't know if it's even going to be a problem this time, but only one way to find out. Polish by feature is great, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I missed that one. Well, Paul, hook me up. So see there, it's giving me thickness. So I'll just, but it's giving me thickness with polygroups. So I just want one side. I don't need all of it. So I just delete hidden. And now it's the wrong way around, so I'll just flip it. And now I need a zero mesh. Oh, it's too. I might need to put this one up so much. So now I just want to thin this out. And the idea is, like, this part wouldn't really be wrapped to it. It's more like, you know, like bits of his brow, like, that are growing up and off the surface. So that can like stick up. So if I just mask this here, flip the mask, and then I have this, see what's down there? I have this keyboard, I have a keyboard shortcut for this, but I'm just using project. Just here, project, under the subtools, down here, project all. And that's just snapping it back to the surface again, so I can like clean it up or whatever. Even like what I'll often do is, and I don't want to sit here doing this because, you know, don't have too much time left now. But you see, like, I'll go in and delete a bunch of the edges manually, even if ZBrush isn't quite getting me where I need it, just to get it nice and low. Because you see, I have less to worry about, literally less points to worry about getting, and then the smooth will do the work for me then, keep things nice and even, so I can get those nice lines and curves. So I'll just smooth, or I'll just mask this off because I don't want this to snap the surface. It's far enough, it might not, but so there you go. So I'll do this real quick. So again, all I've changed is the brow. It's the only part I've broken the symmetry on, so I can still have higher subdivisions, so let's use them. Just go straight across here for now. Although of course this should go down the neck, but the neck isn't attached yet, so no biggie. getting this like cleaned up. Extrude all polygons. So yeah, this one's clean. Break the symmetry there. So at this point I can take the rest of the, like I can extrude these eyelids inwards. And now really the only place that I have to work outside of symmetry is around the eyes. Now, and I'll change the mouth. I would want to, you know, just tilt the mouth or whatever. Go symmetry there. I can start sculpting into this a little bit. So I'm just burying in a little bit here. A little volume. Burying in a little bit. Just out here. I'm just adding volume there. Because you go concave on the inside of the eye, and the outside of the eye is like a fleshy bit, and it tends to get a bit around this there. So again, just using that all smooth, not smooth because I don't want to lose that volume. So I'm just pulling it out and then just all smooth, and you just get used to, like, every time I go to smooth I lift my finger straight back off it. I have to concentrate more if I actually just want to smooth, and usually when I use just straight up smooth, it's to it's actually to polish something, not to this. And now, see, like if I start trying to go in here and start shoving things around without dropping the subdivision levels, I'm gonna have to start really going in and trying to fight it to clean the surface back up. So why would I do that when I've got subdivision levels? There's no reason. Now I have to break in symmetry a bit far there, so I can't work on those two parts simultaneously. So I'm just going to go into deformation and mask everything but where I want to match the other side. So see what I did there? Let's try to match the other end. So I think in order to get this, like I was saying earlier, I really do need to like stretch the eyes. There's not really any other way around it. At this point, yeah, I can go in and the T-pose mesh. Start refining that pose a little bit there. Pushing it a little bit better. Well, something I want to do is have this curve nicely into this to not be masked and get a nice flow in that brow. You see? Yeah, we'll fix it later. So see, I broke that here because it hadn't got symmetry. But ta-da! It's two shortcut keys. That is mirror, which is here, and then mirror and weld, which is geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld. So I have those shortcut keys. Those as shortcut keys, and they're right next to each other. So I can just swap it because it wants to copy from the screen left hand side. So I know we're late now. Yeah, we're 10 minutes over. So let's wrap this up. So I always do this. Awful, man. As my mother would say. Your cupid is literally side-balded. Yup. You weren't expecting it though. That's what we're going for here. We wanna mess with your expectations. Don't wanna just do cupid. I'm looking kinda just I feel not very interesting. I'm gonna do my own spin on it, you know. I'd say Cupid isn't interesting. Just not me thing. You know what? See now, a big move. And that's what's super handy about T-pose mesh. You can come in and make a big move. So there you go. So the point being, at this point now, and again, so that's in practical terms, if I was doing this as a print or if I just wanted to do a render, you know, render up a nice image. I can do the posing this way, and I can pose with freedom because I'm not stuck to controlling multiple different surfaces at the same time because they're all welded together. I can control the different surfaces at the same separately and have more control. And as much as I was yapping away, which is for ages today, I'm not moving quite as fast. It is absolutely easier to keep things asymmetrical. You know what? Before we go, or to keep things separate, even when you go asymmetrical, is what I mean to say. Because it just means that you're able to control those shapes better. Turn on symmetry. I need to get smaller with these eyes again. That's the one. I'll fix that back over here. I always think of like T-pose mesh and subtools as like separate rooms. So I always say, oh, I'll fix that back out here, back out in the, it's like back out in the workshop. Insert, delete, mask, this, flip. Include today's lesson. So, like I always said, blocking is the key part, because that's where you find out your major forms. So this is how I would get this into the major forms pose. And now at this point I can take the head, the nose, the eye, the eyelids, the ears, the neck, subdivide them, merge them together, dynamesh them, and then I can sculpt into them all in one piece at that point. So, but even breaking the symmetry at this stage made it a lot easier to get that brow into place. Like if I had remember before how I started and the brows were both up, or even if I made them neutral and then had to get this shape without affecting the eyelids and sculpting into it and stuff, I'd have a lot less control because I'd have to get in under and I'd have to bury in with like Damien Standard and stuff like that. Probably inflate it to be able to actually get some ambient occlusion there and not just have like a round, instead of like where there's a fold of skin, like you get two contacting surfaces. Like it's very hard to do that with a Damien Standard without just having where you can see the crease. You want the actual two folds to meet, so you have to get in, bury in there, and then use the inflate. It's not very clean. If you use the smooth or the alt smooth, they're going to smooth away from each other. You're going to get weird angles. Doing it this way is going to allow you to do all that, and with a lot less hassle. And once you dynamesh it, then you can start. So at this point now, I could dynamesh this, and then I can go in and like add the little wrinkles. I can, even after I dynamesh this, I can even still go in with my Damien Standard and redefine where that surface of that eyelid meets, you know. So I'm not still just tied to this necessarily either. Like I can still sculpt into it, but it just gets me there quicker with less hassle. Turn off this. Subdivide some of these. Should get a better idea. So yeah, today's stream was a lot more about process of sculpting a character like this. Why can't I see? There you go. And to stop people from being afraid to sculpt asymmetrically, because that's generally a big problem. I did a mentorship at one stage, probably like a year or two ago now, and the student that I was teaching, you know, had no problem listening to listen to everything I was saying to do, and I was doing a great job. And I showed a sculpt that I had done, I think called Larry. It's still in my ArtStation, and there's a video there in my ArtStation where you can see this in speed sculpt. You can see it all the way through, and I broke the symmetry early on and went into it then, and then sculpted into it after. I'll just grab it, throw it into the chat so you can find it. The YouTube videos is in there. There you go. So that's the particular piece in my ArtStation. So you can see it there. You can see me go through this process and all the way to poly paint, and the renders and stuff are there as well, obviously. So this is how I always approach this. The same if I was printing a character as opposed to just doing renders. But this is generally how I always approach it, rather than sculpting all the way through in neutral. So don't be afraid to sculpt asymmetrically. It's not the end of the world. It's not more work. Depends. See, Shane, I call it going up and down. It's going down into pose mode and back up into high res mode. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I always imagine it like this is my workshop, and then we go into the parts department or something. So I always think like, we'll sort it out over there. Yeah. Okay, so we'll wrap it up there because I'm running over time now. But anyway, I hope that helped, and it was always a pleasure chatting to you. I love the last two streams are great. These are all very chatty. I love it. Always enjoy those. Maybe the next one I'll focus a bit more on the sculpting for those of you who enjoy that.